The sports you love, the teams you can't live without.
Get a sense of urgency!
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. It's time to talk a little University of Utah sports with the man himself. Hit it, Christian.
Covering the Utes better than anyone else. This is Ute insider Steve Bartle of KSLSports.com on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Steve, we were debating in the last segment whether or not you're a high society guy. And I said no, but maybe like a secret society guy, like a Mason or something. Are we anywhere close?
I'm not a high society guy.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No way.
Okay. Hey, Steve, thanks for jumping on. I talked to Mitch earlier in the show. How happy are you that your beat is scandal-free at the moment?
I'm good over here. Let's just say that. And obviously, with that whole situation, I think Mitch has done a really good job of handling it with, you never want to see these types of things for a number of reasons, right? And I think it's important to be, respectful and approach this in a very delicate way. And I think Mitch has done that, and he's been really impressive to listen to the last, 2 days since the news broke. It's definitely a shock, and I'm glad that I don't have to necessarily, cover it as in-depth as Mitch will, but, he's done a tremendous job with it so far.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I the word I used for it, not only good, but his coverage has been very appropriate. You know what I mean?
Yes,
and I just hate the online stuff after, stories like this. I've seen the jokes out there, and it's kind of gross. So I like it that Mitch his coverage has been really cut and dry and informative, and I'm with you. I think he's hit a home run. But you do not have a scandal on the Utah beat, but that doesn't mean that you have not been busily writing. Enjoyed your piece the other day talking about the quarterback room for the University of Utah football team, and just kind of give us a layout of what you wrote about, because obviously this is going to be an extremely important position group coming up this fall.
Yeah, obviously this is the big group in football, right? Is the quarterback position, and with what's transpired over the last 2 years, with the unfortunate injuries to Cam Rising last season, and all of everything that happened in 2023, the year before that. I think there's a lot of excitement to usher in this new era with Devin Dampier. I think there's a lot of excitement around him, and I think there's been a renewed energy and vibe around the program with his personality, his charisma, and his leadership style. He's been very team first and team oriented, and both on the field and practice during spring ball, but also off the field. He's been very involved with his teammates off the field. And I think that is an element that is different than what's been the experience the last 2 years. With Cam Rising dealing with the injuries, he's had to be away from the team. So I think just having Devin Dampier, in place is a big deal for Utah. And, in watching him over the course of spring, I was really impressed with the progress that the passing game made. Obviously, when you have to turn over as much as Utah did, from last season with, hiring a new offensive coordinator, bringing in a new quarterback, and basically, entirely new skill positions with a handful of transfers and freshmen coming in that have completely remade those rooms. You're basically starting from scratch, and from where they were and how they were executing and playing in week one to the end of spring ball, it was a night and day difference, in terms of, how they looked. You could tell that in week one, there was a lot of thinking. There was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of missed opportunities, bad execution, missed assignments, and that sort of stuff. But by the end of spring camp, this was an offense that looks pretty potent, looked pretty dangerous with Devin Dampier and developing a good chemistry with, his pass catchers. So I was really encouraged by that. And I think Dampier really played a big role in that because he has such great command of the offense, thanks to his experience under Beck last season. He was able to hold guys, accountable and help with the installation of the offense and making sure that things are executed properly and all of that sort of stuff. So it really kind of accelerated the installation process of the new offense, having Dampier in place. And I think, with him specifically, obviously we know that he's a dynamic dual threat quarterback. When you rush for 1,100 yards and 19 touchdowns as a quarterback, that's pretty impressive. The key for him is obviously going to be adjusting to this power conference level. And, we won't know how he handles that until we get into these games and see how he performs. But I was encouraged by the progress that he seemed to make. I've watched a lot of film from 2024 of him, and from that to what I saw in spring ball, I was encouraged by the improvement he seemed to make with his accuracy and the consistency in his accuracy. So I think, all in all, I think Devin Dampier is exactly the quarterback that they needed to sort of turn the page on this last chapter, on this, over the last couple of years with Cam Rising. Obviously we know how that unfortunately ended with Cam retiring, due to the injuries that he suffered. And I think having Dampier in place, just his personality, his leadership, and his style of play and all of that, I think is exactly what Utah needed to move forward into 2025.
I'm sure this is a question you've answered a million times, but why did Isaac Wilson come back?
Yeah, it's obviously with him, a highly touted freshman last year. He got into the program and made a big impression. And then, 2024, he's thrust into a situation where he's got to step up and perform, at a level that he wasn't really prepared for. So he entered the portal after last season and assessed his options. And from what I was told, Jason Beck wanted to bring him back, and Beck and Isaac had, good productive conversations where I think Isaac felt comfortable with what Beck, the sort of vision that he had with the offense and how he fit into that offense. So I think with Isaac, when you go through a season like he did, it's understandable if a quarterback loses confidence. And I'm not saying that, nobody's told me that, but I think it's easy to see over the course of the season that, he lost confidence just due to the struggles that the offense as a whole went through. And I think there's a rebuilding process going on with him right now. So, I think ultimately it came down to those conversations with Beck and Isaac. But certainly when you enter the portal and you kind of get a feel for, how others view you, that can contribute to things as well. But I think ultimately it was those conversations with Beck and what he sees with this offense.
As long as we're talking position groups, Steve, is there a position group on paper anyway right now that's, set to be a strength of the team?
Offensive line, without a doubt, it's the offensive line. As we're talking about last year, with the struggles that Utah had at quarterback, it really cast a tough shadow over the entire offense. It really kind of bogged things down and made Utah really easy to defend. And that didn't allow the offensive line to shine. And I think with having a quarterback that can execute an offense like Dampier was able to last year, I think that's going to allow the offensive line to really shine. And obviously we know that Spencer Fano, he's an All-American. He's viewed as one of the top prospects in next year's draft. They've got another kid in Caleb Lomu at left tackle who is starting to, see his name more and more on these draft lists and that sort of stuff. And, that the interior group, too, you've got Michael Mokofisi and Jaron Kump, who have played a lot of football for Utah. And then you've got Tanoa Togiai, who made the move from tackle to guard. And he, according to Pro Football Focus, was one of the top-graded guards in college football as well. So you've got an offensive line where you're shifting to more of your strength as an offense with Beck in this run game. And I think that's really going to highlight the strengths of the offensive line, where you have some of these big bodies that are great athletes that can get out into space and do that sort of stuff. So if you're looking for the strongest unit on this roster, it's that offensive line, because not only do you return all 5 starters, but Utah was also able to hold on to the depths that they have behind them. And, they've recruited really well over the years with Jim Harding. He's done a fantastic job of building and maintaining that depth. And to hold on to it with everything, the transfer portal and all that, and how difficult it's become, I think that's significant for Utah with that group.
Going through your latest on the basketball team, it seems like Alex Jensen has been quite busy. Update us on what's going on roster-wise. And I know you talked a little bit about his philosophy, too.
Yeah, with Alex Jensen, I think we're all eager to see, what sort of identity, he's going to take on. And he's, you can talk about it all you want, but until these guys get on the floor and we actually see what it looks like, I think, there's just going to be a lot of excitement over that and intrigue and all of that. But, Alex has talked about the desire to be a tough defensive team, in the mold of a Houston Cougar type team, where you've got, really dynamic athletes on the wing. You've got length and athleticism on the interior, and they've recruited to that. When you look at a Terrence Brown and you look at a Don McHenry and a Ja'Kai Howard, these are dynamic athletes that can defend, which, Utah, I thought Craig Smith, I like what he brought in last summer, trying to emphasize the size. But as we got into Big 12 play, it just wasn't a good fit for the conference. And, Utah wasn't able to create good offensive situations with their backcourt. They weren't able to, break down defenders, get into the paint, because they weren't athletic enough. They had the size and all that, but they just couldn't, create mismatches. And I think that's been a big point of emphasis for Jensen and his staff is, getting some guards that can create offense, that can break down defenders, get into the paint, get those paint touches where you force defenses to react and create opportunities on the perimeter. So they've done that with Terrence Brown and Don McHenry and Elijah Moore even. And what I've really appreciated about, the guys that they've brought in is they've brought in guys that they can build with. Obviously we know that continuity is tough in today's college athletics, but they've made that a point of emphasis of recruiting guys that have multiple years of eligibility to at least try to build a nucleus and core with, as you get into year 2 and year 3 of this rebuild, having a Ja'Kai Howard around for 2 years, or, Elijah Moore, having those guys around for multiple years and leading the way in your culture and brand setting, I think that's huge. So, you've got an upgrade in athleticism, in the backcourt, and they've continued that in the front court as well, where they've recruited athletes, they've recruited length, with Seydou Traore, Babacar Faye, and James Okonkwo. These are big guys that are, they don't look big in terms of their listed height. They're 6'8", 6'9", but James Okonkwo has a 7'2" wingspan. Faye is similar with the 7-foot wingspan, and these are all plus athletes as well. So I think Alex and his staff have done a good job of identifying young guys with multiple years of eligibility left that they can, hopefully hang on to and build with. And they've really kind of leaned into this identity of being athletic, being a defensive-minded team first. And there's, potential with this group on the offensive end where you can create mismatches with your athleticism and hopefully create open looks on the perimeter, which I think is going to be key for this offense next year.
So last weekend, I took my kids to the Natural History Museum up there, and is a wonderful museum. But we drove by Fort Douglas. And I have, do we have a timeline on that new project for the basketball stadium and all that? Or do we know when they're going to start that or break ground? And secondly, if you hear they're getting rid of the tank, I'll take it from them if they need to find a spot.
Yeah, they've got a few projects going on up there at Utah. Obviously, first and foremost, I think the project, that is in terms of time and all of that. The baseball stadium has gone up in a quick fashion. I remember during spring ball, we had 5 weeks, and from week 1 to week 5, the progress that they made on that was pretty significant. So you've got a baseball stadium going up there, and then with the basketball arena with the Huntsman Center, they announced that they're looking at relocating the Huntsman Center and what that could look like. This is going to take time, and I think there's a chance that maybe we see finalized plans at some point this year, but this is going to be a project that won't really begin for a couple years. So we're a ways away still from that. In terms of where it could best fit, I think ideally, you want to house it somewhere close to the football stadium, just to have everything in that central location, where you've got all of your athletic programs, they're on Guardsman Way with the golf facility, baseball, the football facility, all of that stuff. You can house it somewhere there. I think that would be great. And there's been a lot of talk about potential locations for the new arena. I think personally that if you have the money, you have the funds available, and you have the willingness to do it, that figuring out how to place that in the west parking lot of Rice-Eccles Stadium somehow. You may have to expand the lot, maybe. I don't know. You're going to have to figure out where you're going to relocate some of this parking, because parking is already difficult to come by up there. But I think, somewhere that west lot, maybe the east lot, if you can figure it out, I don't know. There are people getting paid much more than me to figure that out. But that is going to be the process, and that's the process that they're in, is figuring out where that is going to fit best, because, President Taylor Randall, he has a much grander vision for, not just the athletics program, but the university as a whole. He wants to remake the entire campus and turn it into more of a campus, college. And so I think this is a big project that they're, working through. And it incorporates a number of different factors, with the Huntsman, I think, being a key piece to all of it.
Steve, you are the best. Thank you, as always, for jumping on with us. Keep up the good work.
Appreciate you, Jake. Have a good one, man.
Thank you, Steve. Have a great weekend. All right, there you go. That's our buddy Steve Bartle. Follow all of his fantastic coverage of the University of Utah at kslsports.com. And he's nice enough to jump on our show on Friday. So big shout out to Steve. Yeah, interesting stuff. I mean, driving by that Fort Douglas, it's a big area. I mean, I don't know if I'm all for them spending all that money to make a big thing, but there's certainly space to do it. That's for sure. And yeah, I would think it would be cool to have a tank in my front yard.
Wouldn't we all?
Right? If somebody came up to you right now, Christian, and said, hey, do you want a tank? You're saying yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what I'd do with it or if it ran or anything, but I'm saying yes.
Do your neighbors ever do anything that would make you need a tank? Just for intimidation purposes, not to actually shoot, but
there's always reasons for intimidation purposes, sure. But no, I haven't thought about firing a tank at my neighbors before.
No, not firing the tank.
No, I haven't considered that. I do think it would be cool though. And yeah, are you stealing a package off the front porch if somebody's got a tank in their yard?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Don't mess with that guy.
Yeah, I don't think so. Are you breaking into a car in front of the house that has a tank in the front yard? No way.
Or the house.
And a sign that says beware of tank? Not beware of dog, but owner will operate this tank if needs be. It'd be pretty awesome. I'd invade a next door neighborhood. I'm in Mill Creek. I'd invade Holiday. What are they going to do about it?
Just driving the tank.
Drive right down and say, you know what? Right up to City Hall and say, this town is mine now. What are they going to do? I'll fire my tank at you.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to give it to you.
No, I'll find somewhere else for that. I mean, they are, I guess, just like museum tanks at this point. But still, they've got some long-range artillery up there, too. You could do something with that. I wouldn't see with that. I wouldn't invade Holiday. I'd just rain shells down upon Holiday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in the roads, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe an unoccupied building. What do you think?
I hope there's nobody in there.
Sounds like a good way for me to end up in jail. Stay tuned. We will have more coming up next. It's Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is DJ and PK.
Sam Farnsworth, Channel 5, joining us. OKC, I think to a degree, they're a role model for the Jazz. They missed the playoffs only 3 seasons, and the Jazz, obviously, we're at that point. How about expediting the process a little bit, or just say, no, we're going to go right back at it next year?
Expediting the process, I think that's what most fans would love to see because they've patiently endured, and I think that's part of what made the draft lottery such a gut punch. We endured all that. We went through all that to just get the 5th pick. I still feel like in the end, the best way for the Jazz is to do it one more time.
Did you just go and quote a Britney Spears song?
One more time, baby. Just one more time. Come on. I mean, next year's draft class is better, right?
Catch DJ and PK mornings from 6 to 10 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Your home for the best sports coverage in Utah. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake Scott, Ben Anderson. Let's give away some tickets. We did this earlier. We've got another pair to give away. Always good to have tickets. Caller number 12 right now, 801-575-ZONE. We're hooking you up with a pair of tickets to go see Hardy on the Jim Bob World Tour next Thursday at Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater, 801-575-ZONE. And we're going to be giving away those tickets every hour throughout the day, every show. Awesome. Super cool. So caller number 12 right now, 801-575-ZONE. Just a couple of NBA basketball things that are out there. Did you see Tyrese Halliburton's great line, Christian, after he hit the game-winning shot to beat the Knicks?
Which one? Which line?
Apparently, she went on to the Snap Talk, put out a picture, and she said, finally got to see the ball drop in New York City.
Good one.
I thought that was a pretty good line. Maybe we've got a new wag to follow, Jade Jones. She at least is kind of snarky and funny. So there you go. Finally got to see the ball drop in New York City. We also have LeBron James news, courtesy of The Athletic. So in talking about the Luka deal, I've always said, there are people out there who are saying, oh, LeBron, the GM, made the Luka deal, or LeBron put together the Luka deal, or at very least approved of it. I say balderdash to all of that. I don't think LeBron or Rich Paul or Adele knew anything about it. I think they were as blindsided as all of this, as all of us. And I do think there is some of Linda Rambus / Jeannie Buss taking her franchise back, making a big move for Luka. All of a sudden, LeBron isn't necessarily he's not the best player on the team anymore. He doesn't get to wave around the LeBron power because he's no longer the present or the future of the LA Lakers. And I've brought it up that I think there's a strong possibility that LeBron James is not on the Lakers next year. Now, of course, basketball expert Ben Anderson disagreed with that take, and he thinks they'll run it back. But he doesn't necessarily disagree with my take about LeBron having nothing to do with the Luka Doncic trade. But The Athletic, Jovan Buha, has said on his podcast, quote, "There's always a chance that LeBron can walk, as we've reported at The Athletic multiple times, and it's not just my reporting. It's been Sam Amick as well. The relationship has been a little frosty at times. It hasn't always been the warmest over the past couple of years," unquote. By the way, Sam Amick is a great reporter. I have no doubt. He's done a lot of great work. He used to come on a show I did weekly, and he's very good. Yeah, I'm sure the relationship is icy because you do what LeBron says, and you have a warm relationship. You don't do what LeBron says, and you're going to have a frosty relationship. And I do not think that LeBron wanted Luka Doncic anywhere near his team, especially considering that Anthony Davis' agent is also Adele. And so if LeBron/Adele traded Anthony Davis away from the Lakers, that probably would not be a real popular thing in the walls of good old Klutch Sports. I don't think that Klutch or LeBron had anything to do with that move, and he's probably a little bit bent about it. This reporter from The Athletic went on to say he does think LeBron will be a Laker next year. It's just a matter of him opting in or opting out and signing. So still thinks he's going to be back as a Laker. But, yeah, frosty relationship. LeBron, you don't have any leverage anymore. You're an average player now in your 40s. Now, I mean, how many NBA players actually play into their 40s and are effective? So, shout out to LeBron. But you're not the best player in the league. You're not even the best player on the Lakers anymore. And why would they make moves to please you? And I'm sure that bugs him because now he's not the best player on the team. I thought we saw that manifest itself on the floor. I thought it was funny to watch Luka Doncic freeze out LeBron James in the fourth quarter. I'm sure he hates that.
It's like when Jeremy Lin waved off Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, right. Great point. Exactly.
Except Luka's a little better than Jeremy Lin.
Way better than Jeremy Lin, but the Kobe Bryant comparison is very apt. I'm sure Kobe, who's used to being the best player on every team he's ever been on, doesn't really want to be waved off by Jeremy Lin or anybody for that matter. But for LeBron to get waved off in the fourth quarter, and he has to take it, like there's nothing he can do about it. In the past, he could have this guy fired or that guy fired or this person traded or that person traded merely by complaining about something publicly. He got, who was the guy? The Miami Heat drafted Shabazz Napier in the second round because LeBron James had complimented Shabazz's game during the NCAA tournament. And the Heat draft Shabazz Napier, and then the funny part is that LeBron left days later and went back to Cleveland. So, I mean, this is a guy who's used to having the world revolve around him. And his agency is used to the NBA world revolving around Klutch. Rich Paul himself has said he had no idea that the Luka Doncic trade was coming. But in that same clip, he said he knows 99% of what's going to happen in the NBA, months, if not years, before it happens. There are rumors out there, I've heard them from multiple places, that De'Aaron Fox was destined for San Antonio like a year and a half ago, that was coming down the pike. Because now after player empowerment, these agents and these agencies have so much control over what happens in the league. Giannis will have input on where he's traded. That will be a part of it. They used to not be a part of it. But if Giannis, and now maybe Giannis is a bad example because he's got like 3 years left on his contract, like Donovan Mitchell did. So his opinion means a lot less than it would if he were close to leaving. But I know that the Jazz have been interested in players, and those players have said, we're not going to re-sign there, and the Jazz back off. I mean, the players and the players' agents now have all this control that they didn't used to have.
Brandon Ingram was a recent example.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So it's interesting to see LeBron go through this phase of his career where he's not his game and Klutch's game has always been arm twisting. We have all the leverage because we're LeBron James. We've got all the control, and we're going to make you do what we want. And you can't do that anymore.
Which is terrible for the league, by the way.
I think so, but that's how it is now. I mean,
well, that's how it was. Maybe this is a sign that things are changing. I don't know.
See, I think LeBron created this. I think he created. I shouldn't say him. It's not just him. I mean, I like piling on LeBron as much as the next guy.
Without him is the
right,
thing.
Exactly. But these there's going to be other LeBrons that come along and flex like this. Like James Harden flexed on the Houston Rockets. I mean, he absolutely played up his leverage. And by the way, guess who James Harden's agent is? Old Adele, you know? And James has batted his way out of markets. I mean, he's been completely manipulative throughout his career, flexing his talent on whatever team he happens to be on. But LeBron pioneered all this behavior. Now, James Harden never created his own agency and empowered his buddy from high school, which is basically what Rich Paul is. They didn't go to high school together, but he met Rich while he was in high school. Rich Paul was selling T-shirts out of his trunk. That's how he and LeBron met. And it's interesting. I mean, LeBron's whole philosophy of empowering his, why should CAA get rich off me? Why not my buddy Rich Paul get rich off me? Does that make,
Right.
That was his ethos. Like Worldwide Wes was like his AAU guy. You know what I mean? Like his AAU handler. I mean, LeBron, his philosophy was, I'm going to take these people with me, which is kind of noble in a way, but I don't know what they've done with that. I don't like it. I don't like Rich Paul's behavior as an agent. The arm twisting and all that stuff.
Manipulate things behind the scenes and try and control half the NBA. I do think once LeBron retires, though, I think that's gone because that's half of their power. 75% of their power is LeBron James.
But the next agent will do it.
Maybe there's not a superstar, a face in the league right now that can have that kind of power. And Klutch really needed LeBron. They couldn't do that without LeBron.
Yeah, and somebody like Giannis is not an arm twister. Famously. I mean, he resigned in Milwaukee. He has not had that until now, and it'll be interesting to see how much he throws his weight around of where he wants to go or doesn't want to go.
And part of it is because LeBron has been around so long. Like, when did Klutch become this, what they are right now as far as manipulating everything?
LeBron started out at, I want to say it was CAA. And he made CAA hire Rich Paul and show Rich Paul the ropes. And then broke off and went independent. Rich Paul started Klutch Sports. It's probably like late aughts, like 2007, 2008, somewhere around there.
Founded in 2012.
2012, okay.
But then you didn't start seeing the lay GM stuff until, I guess, when he went to the Heat, right? So around that same time.
He was always lay GM. Even in his last year in Cleveland, he made them trade for somebody. He made them trade for Antoine Jameson, I want to say. I can't remember. But he did it when he was in Cleveland. Maybe not as egregiously. And actually, the reason or part of the reason that he left Miami was because they pushed back against that stuff. Pat Riley famously wouldn't let LeBron, the GM, fire Eric Spoelstra. The narrative was coming out that they were going to move off Spoelstra like 2 months into LeBron being in Miami. And Pat Riley put the brakes on it and kind of pushed back against that sort of thing. And, I used the Shabazz Napier example, but that's just a second-round pick. And part of the reason that LeBron was so eager to go somewhere else was because he didn't have that kind of control. And then famously, his second run in Cleveland, I mean, it was him doing everything.
Right. That's when it kind of all started.
Firing David Blatt, making moves, signing his own Klutch guys, basically, giving Tristan Thompson and J.R. Smith outrageous deals because they're Klutch guys.
Yeah, I just don't think there's anybody in the NBA right now that would hold that kind of water.
And flex like that. There you go. So there you go. LeBron and the relationship with the Lakers is a little frosty. Yeah, it's because they didn't do what you told them. All right, stay tuned. More next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hey, bro. You hear us every day with our crazy opinions.
Hey, what you doing?
Well, now it's time to hear from you.
Hey, great show.
Download the KSL Sports app and fire off your thoughts with the call-in tab on the bottom of your screen.
Your show is fantastic. It's the one that captivates me the most.
You can tell PK to stop singing.
She bangs.
Let Jake and Ben know what you really think of the Jazz.
Woo!
Tell Hans and Scotty about your favorite barbecue spot or what color of tie JJ should be wearing on TV. The best entries will be played on the air. Download the KSL Sports app now and hit the call-in button to let your voice be heard.
I think you guys do an incredible job.
This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Whether it's the Jazz, Utes, Cougars, or Aggies, these guys have got you covered.
Time to eat, fellas.
You're locked on to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
1, 2, 3, move it.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Two niggas on the airways, talking sports. They got it made drinks and not so. Loves his tie-dye, Ben's got style with his scarves. Oh my. From the gardens to the basketball courts, they bring the
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This segment brought to you by Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach, where 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255. Peach Doors and Windows. So, quick funny story about my my 4-year-old, just to squeeze this in. So, a couple nights ago, my 8-year-old Christian, or almost 8-year-old, had a bad dream, right? And so we were talking about dreams the next day. And I was lightening the mood, right? And I told Sadie, I was like, oh, I had this dream when I was a kid that I went to school and I wasn't wearing any pants. Because have you ever had that dream? Isn't that somewhat of a common dream?
Yeah.
I still remember it to this day. The dream, it was so like I'm standing at my elementary school. Like I could tell you in the dream where I was, like right by the office. And I looked down and I'm not wearing any pants. So and they asked me, underpants? And I said, no, I wasn't wearing any underpants either. So fast forward to yesterday, my 4-year-old gets home from daycare and she goes, Dad, I told a funny story about you to my friends at school. I said, oh, well, what'd you say, honey? That you don't have any pants or underpants on.
Close enough.
And I was like, wait a minute. So you're just walking around your school telling people that I'm not wearing pants or underpants? Like, I'm going to get somebody that shows up to the door, you know? Like, I'm going to get reported to social services or something.
Well, for what it's worth, our cameras only show you from, the waist up.
I am currently wearing shorts, not pants, but I have underpants.
But nobody would know either way.
But isn't that funny? It just makes you think, like, I wonder what teachers or certainly people who work at a daycare, I wonder what they hear from these kids about the families all day. I bet you they know all, or no, I shouldn't say all, like snippets of everybody's business. Does that make sense?
So much of it is probably misinterpreted, right?
Yeah.
Because you're talking to 4-year-olds.
Yeah, my 4-year-old's talking about me walking around not wearing pants or underpants. I was talking about a dream.
From like 30 years ago.
From 35
years ago.
Oh, man. Having little kids is just the best. Well, you told a funny story about me. Oh, good. Oh, that one. My guy Petros Papadakis is in the news, blasting away. Did you see that USC is thinking of ending the rivalry with Notre Dame?
Yeah,
and that Lincoln Riley is rumored to be the kind of the engine for that whole thing. That Lincoln Riley doesn't want to play Notre Dame. They don't want to travel to South Bend. Don't need another hard game. Probably wants a patsy non-conference game to pad his terrible record, especially at USC. And anyway, my guy Petros has been very strong calling out Lincoln Riley about ruining, over 100 years of tradition. Oh, do we have it? Oh, yeah, let's play it. I'd love to hear it. I've just got the quote in front of me. Play it.
And that's kind of the beauty of USC Notre Dame, is that it transcends conference realignment. It transcends the NIL, and it transcends all of these different twists and turns in the sport. If it could survive world wars, it should be able to survive the selfishness and the absolute myopic nature of the era we live in. It's ridiculous to think that it wouldn't, because Lincoln Riley doesn't like it. Who the hell is Lincoln Riley?
Petros, by the way, if you're not familiar, he does. He's an analyst for Fox Sports doing football games. He's got a radio show in L.A., but he was a running back at USC, and he's part of one of those USC legacy families. And I love his take about Lincoln Riley. Is there a coach in college football that's more obnoxious than Stinkin' Riley?
Ooh, probably not.
Yeah, Stinkin' thinks he's so important that he can just end 100 years of tradition. And I get it, college football is changing. And part of his point there was USC and Notre Dame, for that matter, transcend all this new stuff, and kind of rivalries like that are at least a memory of how kind of it used to be. I mean, I love it that Utah and BYU played each other as much as they did while BYU was independent. Now, obviously, that rivalry being back is in full force is really terrific. But, man, USC couldn't get rid of Stinkin' Riley fast enough.
There were a lot of – that short clip didn't really get into Papadakis really tearing into it. But there's like a quote tweet. Colin Cowherd said, 2 iconic programs, 2 different things change. And then Petros quote tweeted him and said, "Your boy Lincoln asked you to do this?"
Petros is funny. All right. Coming up next, Hanson, Scotty G. Stay tuned. We'll talk to you on Tuesday. Have a happy Memorial Day, everyone. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.